with us now to talk about Steve Jobs' medical leave, one of the most accurate analysts on Apple, Jim Kelleher. He's the director of research at Argus. He's on the phone with us this morning. Jim is a Bloomberg Best. Jim, yesterday, Apple shares fell 8% in German trading. Is that what Steve Jobs is worth to Apple these days, 8% of the company's market value?
Well, good morning, Erik. And that question really is at the heart of the issue. Certainly, since he came back, there has been a premium built into the stock related to the aura of Steve Jobs. But don't forget that prior to the iPhone, this was sort of a second-tier computer company with an MP3 business. And although there is a lot of Steve Jobs aura, there is also a lot of reality in terms of earnings and sales growth at Apple because of iPod, iPad, and iPhone. So it's no longer just a Steve Jobs story.
You spoke with Erik about the Steve Jobs premium. He actually asked you, is it worth more than 8% to the stock? We know it's hard to quantify, but maybe what's worth more pointing out is this year's going to be hard for Apple anyway, right? No matter who's at the top.
Yes, Deirdre, and good morning. The issue for Apple is that they've had a couple of home runs here. And in some regards, and notwithstanding the engineering excellence at Apple, taking aim at the phone was sort of an obvious target, and then the tablet computer as well. But what's going to happen now is that Steve Jobs is going to step away, and there really is no next big thing on the horizon for Apple that's of the scale of the iPhone or the tablet computer. And at least some investors are going to conclude that it's the absence of Jobs rather than the lack of an obvious new big thing that resulted in kind of a weak new product slate in 2011 or 2012. We'll just have to see.
And Jim, I guess it's worth pointing out that for as much as we talk about Apple, at least in the smartphone sector, I mean, the iPhone is still number 3 after Google Android and after RIM's BlackBerry. At least for the moment, Apple still has that number 3 spot. I want to ask you, though, about something that you just said. I mean, analysts tell us that Apple is set. So product development, earnings, revenue plans for the next 2 to 5 years. In other words, it could be Tim Cook, it could be somebody else, that the path has already been set. Do you think that's true?
I think it's very true because there really are worlds to conquer, particularly for the iPhone. We know there's deals out there with China Mobile, China Telecom. Having a CDMA phone puts them in lots of markets that they've not been in yet. And really, they have barely begun the ramp. We see a minimum of 16 million iPhones selling in this quarter alone, as they report this evening. And we think the growth just goes up there, grows from there.
We know that Apple is going to be reporting earnings. I mean, what are you expecting as far as what we're going to hear from last quarter?
Well, we're looking at least 50% revenue growth. I've got them at about $24.2 billion. I think the consensus might be a little light of that. Looking for a good iPad quarter, certainly with, well over 5 million units, perhaps 6 million units sold. And, they're still selling, 10 or 11 million iPod units. And then the PC business has really been helped by the fact that there are all these new Apple believers, all these people that their first Apple product was an iPod or an iPhone, and they're now looking at the computer business, so units in the computers will be up as well.
Jim, I know you're going to be on the call. I mean, how many questions are going to be launched from the analyst community that have to do with Steve Jobs, Tim Cook, and then how many are going to do with earnings? I mean, is anyone going to be talking about earnings this evening?
Apple will begin the call asking us to respectfully, decline to ask about Steve Jobs, and then of course everyone will ask around the edges, everything they come at that question, all different angles. And I think there's a lot of trust in Tim Cook. He's been here a few times. I think there's an ominous feeling though with cancer, this neuroendocrine tumor, in any kind of cancer, you usually only get 1 or 2 remissions, and there's an ominous feeling that goes with this, so a certain amount of sadness as well.
Sure, we wish Steve Jobs the best. Jim Kelleher, thanks so much for joining us. Bloomberg Best, Jim Kelleher joining us there. He is with Argus Research.